Hi everyone, it's Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. Glad you could be with us on our YouTube channel to have a conversation with us about a really interesting topic, something which perhaps we don't discuss all that often, but we should discuss more of. And we're going to talk today about whether or not people that have been abused, sexually abused, should name their perpetrators, and a range of other subjects. And to help us to discuss that, we have Avery Hilditch and we have Michael Windsor on board. We'll just introduce them to you in just a moment. But in the meantime, welcome to CPP TV. So I'd just like to welcome to our program Avery Hilditch. How are you, buddy? How's you going?
Yeah, I'm good today. I've had a pretty good night's sleep, which makes a change.
Good.
And just waiting to get on with this.
All right. Well, we're on to it, and we're practically on time, I think, from what we'd organised, as opposed to last night, which is a bit of a catastrophe. We won't go there, though, will we?
No.
Because we've kind of sorted all this stuff out. And we're about to talk about a subject which interests, I think, a lot of people, and it was raised by Michael, and we're really grateful. And so welcome, Michael. It's really great to have you here, buddy.
Good to be here, mate. How you going?
Yeah, going well. So this is a subject which I guess is a bit tentative for people as to, like, number one, should we name people that have abused? Should those who are abused name those that have abused them? And then the other thing that Michael wanted to talk about is the repercussions. So how this impacts a whole family, particularly, I think, Michael, and you can explain this in a moment, but where a perpetrator is within the family and how that breaks up. Michael has some personal experiences around all this. And I just ask those people, anybody online, to be respectful of Michael, because having to come out and talk about this stuff as well takes a lot of courage. And we appreciate that Michael's been prepared to come forth and talk to us about this today. So, Michael, perhaps we could just start with the notions around, should we name the abuser?
Well, I think, hell yeah, we should be naming the abuser. The abuser gets away with it if we don't, and they also get to carry on abusing because they haven't been exposed. So we should be naming the abuser. The only problem is sometimes you do have a lot of repercussions with that, especially if the abuser is a part of your family, and also the abuser has people behind them that would trust and believe them before they would believe the other people.
So can you just explain that in further details? So there are, of course, no one stands up, Michael, and says, I'm a pedophile, and I'm abusing kids. No one admits to that, and when they're caught out, no one's going to admit to it then either, are they? They're going to deny it. So, and then I guess does it form two sides? Like you have one side that says, oh no, they would never do anything like that, and then you have the other side, which is the victim and people close to the victim who say, yeah.
Well, that's exactly right. And the unfortunate thing is pedophiles come in all different shapes and sizes. They can even come disguised as family members that are caring, loving, nurturing, heroes. They come in all different views. And when you do come out and name somebody like this, the other people that see these people as a hero, as somebody who's a pillar of the family, will look at you and think that you're a liar. It's unfortunate, but it happens all the time. In my case, it happened, and I know that I'm not the only one. I know it happens all across the board.
Can I just ask then, Michael, what happens when someone does, when you've come forward with something quite horrific that's happened to you, and someone just discounts it? Like, what's that like?
It's really heart-wrenching. It's especially when the people that you look up to, that you care about, are looking upon you as a liar because they care about the other person obviously more, or have a closer relationship, or whatever it may be. But it is very painful. And it even makes you doubt yourself at times.
Yeah. Can you explain? Uh, can you explain how it does? Like, how? In what way do you think it causes? What way does it cause you to doubt kind of who you are?
Well, you're doubting yourself in is what I'm remembering true, which you know it is, and then you're also doubting the love that you had for that person to just discount you and look at you as if you're the liar and you're the villain in this subject where you're not the villain, you are the abused, and it's very painful. It hurts a lot, to be honest.
So what can you explain what your experiences were around that? Was there a moment where it was you had to disclose this, and there were people around you that either did or didn't believe you? Can you explain what that experience was like?
Yeah, well, I can. Like the first thing I remember about that is that like another one of my family members had exposed this person. I myself faced the person first one on one and let him know that I remembered what exactly what had happened. Then I was in with one of this person's family members, another family member, and it came up on the news. And this family member called the accuser a liar, and I had to explain to her that she's not a liar because it happened to all of us, and we still weren't believed. Still to this day, this person's now passed on, but before then, still they never believed us. They actually stuck up for this person all the way through court, went into court and give character references against us and for them. I
And
was just not gone.
how did that kind of divide the family though?
Well, there's been no Christmases since for the last 20 years now, no family Christmas. My grandparents have never seen their great grandchildren. They've never seen any of their great grandchildren from all of their all of their children's children, if you understand what I mean. Um, it, it went all the way across the board. The great grandchildren, the great grandchildren. There's literally 40 or 50 of us now that never met our grandparents, and they never met them. And it was just because of one person's selfishness that wanted to have his self gratification with children.
And so I'm assuming then that your grandmother would have chosen to have a relationship. Is that right? Your grandmother would have chosen to maintain the relationship with your grandfather, the abuser, or whoever the other.
Yes,
I'm assuming.
yes, yeah. It wasn't the grandfather; it was actually their son.
All right.
And yes, they did. They stuck up for this person, and we were all ousted. So there was we were no longer welcome in their home. Not that we wanted to be in their home because he lived with them, but we were marked as the troublemakers, as the people just making lies up to cause trouble. And I don't understand why we would be making this up to cause trouble, because all it did was cause trouble for ourselves. All it did is made ourselves look bad for the rest of the family who didn't believe us.
Are you saying there was more than one person that was abused by this person?
There was 8 people abused by this person. Yes,
So in a sense, the 8 people were not believed by
that's right.
some of the members of the family.
Yeah, that's right. They were marked as troublemakers. They were marked as trying to fulfill their own agenda, which I don't understand what that agenda would have been, because all we were trying to do was bring out the truth so that wouldn't happen anymore, so that people after us would not go through the same thing that we went through.
Yeah, and yeah. So and I guess what you're saying too is it's hard to logically understand why someone would side with somebody, particularly when so many people look. I guess to some extent. Well, firstly, we need to say we should believe all kids to start with, but there are times when perhaps one child may be distorting the truth, unlikely as it is, but I guess it could be. But when you have multiple kids stating the same thing, well, then clearly there's some element of truth in that. So I'm wondering whether you think that the other members of the family felt embarrassed, and I don't know. I don't know whether, Avery, you want to jump in here as well, but I'm curious as to what other people might have been thinking, given that there were so many people that admitted to the abuse.
I was thinking exactly that paedophiles are probably the most reviled members of society, and who would want to admit that they had a paedophile in their family? I think a lot of that denial is to protect the family, if you know what I mean, not to protect the perpetrator, but to protect the family itself. We wouldn't have a paedophile in our family.
But then why would someone side with? Because I've known where relationships have broken up just like that. You know, like he's abused my daughter or my son or whoever it is, and the relationship's over. The woman, in most cases, walks out. Yep. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm out of here, and I'm not going to side with you because this is horrific behaviour. So I'm curious, and I don't know, Michael, whether you've got a response to this as to why people would choose to stay with somebody who had. What would somebody want to stay with that person within the family? You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, it all depends on who that person is and what the relationship is with that person. Like, end of the day, we're all parents. If your child is in trouble, you're going to make sure that you do anything in your power to get them out of trouble. So if it's your child that's done this, well, then you are going to stand up and try to support your child, which I do agree with. You must support your child. You must try to get, do the best for them so that they become so that they grow through life unscathed as possible. But when you come to something like this, it's unforgivable. It's you're siding with the devil, so to speak, where those rules, well, they wouldn't count to me. I of course would try to help my child, but if that many people had come forward and said that something had happened to them, well, you can't discount it. If it's a child that actually comes forward and says something like this too, one's got to think, where did that child get the information from? Where did that child know that this sort of thing happens? With us, it was down the track where we were a lot older. Now, with that, why would somebody come up with something like this if it wasn't true? Why would they want to go through the embarrassment? Why would they want to be looked at as an abused person? Because I know some people may like the sympathy, but in my case, no. It was really embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a horrific thing to disclose, is it not? And that you kind of got to wonder. Well, as an older child, you'd be thinking, well, is it worth me going through the emotional psychological pain that is experienced by having to disclose abuse and blaming, talking about who it was that did the abuse, and I think that takes a lot of courage. That takes courage for adults who decades later are disclosing issues around childhood sexual abuse. I mean, that's a real issue. But I just wonder whether some people choose to side with others because they don't want that relationship to end. It's almost like the relationship they have with the abuser, that is the partner or the other members of the family, is more important than the abuse that's happened to the child. And I kind of wonder if on a continuum, like if you see a parent treating a child inappropriately, that is hitting, yelling, screaming, shouting, being physically assaulting, do we tolerate that to a point, or do we step in and say, look, that's just inappropriate. You continue to do that, this relationship is ended, And then at the end of that continuum, you've got childhood sexual abuse. So at some point, if you stick with these families, does that mean then that you're colluding with the abuser? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's exactly what you're doing. a lot of time it comes down to dollars and cents, to be honest. Like if somebody has money, like was in this case, people don't want to let them go. They all think about their inheritance or anything like that. So they will side with the abuser. And as you said before, they also don't want to be known as the family with the pedophile in it. So they will try to cover it up as much as they can.
But that's an interesting idea though. So why can't, if someone commits murder, does that mean somehow that person is acceptable within the family? Like I don't understand it. Can someone else explain this to me? What makes it acceptable? Bad behaviour is bad behaviour. Pedophilia is at the end of that spectrum. I guess murder and incest and a whole host of other stuff is there as well.
I think I've already answered that. It's just the embarrassment. We don't want our family name to be associated with a person like that. So therefore, Grandpa George is not a paedophile. No, my brother Bob is not a murderer.
But aren't we, particularly in the area of pedophilia, aren't we colluding with them? If we remain with them and if we keep them within our family,
I don't know the way. Collusion implies that we're taking part in it. We're enabling them to some extent because we're not condemning them. The family's not externally condemning them. They might do it within the house, within the household, within the family, but they're not saying it in public.
Well, should we condemn them?
What, the family or the?
Well, should we condemn the individual, the perpetrator?
Absolutely, the perpetrator.
And should we not separate ourselves from them?
I think so. And we should separate the perpetrator from society by putting him in jail for a long time.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think. Sorry, mate. Go on.
I was just going to say we've got a comment from Wendy. You finish what you were going to say, then I'd like to read that out.
I was just going to say that like if there is a line in the sand that I would draw around anybody that I know, including my family members, if they behaved in this sort of way, I would not have anything to do with them. End of story.
Yep. As I said, Wendy is watching.
Yeah. And
she tried to comment on the live chat, but for some reason it's not showing up there. I don't know why. We'll have to investigate that.
We will.
What she says is, much love to you, Michael, being a survivor of sexual abuse. It must have been devastating for you when changes came into the Judicial Proceeding Reports Act in Victoria, stopping survivors from speaking out about surviving the sexual abuse they have suffered. Would you like to comment on that, Michael?
Yeah, I think that it's absolute insanity that this law has been brought out. That I can't believe it was passed. Anybody who is an abuser should be named so that other people in the community know to keep people away from that person. The person that in question that I've been referring to was already charged and sentenced for the same crime as what he committed against us 10 years before. But because nobody spoke up about it, nobody let anybody know about it, and there were people that knew about it, he went on to do it to another 8 people. It's insanity that people don't get the chance to name their abuser. I have, because I got to name that person before this law came out. I still would. I don't believe that anybody is going to ever silence me about it. This person was wrong. He's now no longer with us, thank God. But this person was wrong, and he deserves to be named. They all deserve to be named because they are the epitome. They are taking away people's childhood. They're taking away their trust. They're taking away everything. And it's not just now. It goes on and on into the future. Like, not one of us out of the 8 people are actually over what had happened. I thought I was at times, but twice over, it's hit me emotionally where I've done a few things to, well, I can't anymore because he's no longer with us, but to expose them again, because they should be exposed. I'm still blown away when I found out about this law. My first thought was it's got to be changed. it's protecting an abuser and taking away the rights of the abused. It amazes me. I can't believe who would even pass something like that.
Part of the justification for that, or the rationale behind it, was that quote, it's to protect the abused person. What's your view on that, Michael?
It's not to. Where would something like that protect the abused person? The abused person has already been abused. To name your abuser will stop that person from being able to do it to you again. It shows your strength. It shows you've stood up to this person. But to be hushed about it, it's really it's an insult. It's an insult to every person that's been abused out there. So that you can't talk about your abuser. You can't say what happened to you, and you can't say who done it to you. It's craziness. And at the same time, as I said before, it also allows the abuser to go on abusing because people don't know what they do.
I would have thought that being able to name your abuser and discuss what your abuser did, your choice to do so, not somebody saying you must do, but you choosing to do so, would have been a cathartic experience that would help you in your healing process.
You're 100% right there. It's exactly what I did. It's exactly what it did for me. Speaking out about it, telling people what had happened to me, in my eyes, it brought awareness to them to make sure that if they were in a position where they had vulnerable people that could have this happen to them in their care, they could be out there watching for it. I'm completely blown away that you're not allowed to speak about it.
I think
I'll
it's
never
fair.
know why.
It's fair to say though that I think that I understand where you're coming from, Michael, and I'm not disputing it. I'm just devil's advocating here, I guess. But I think that some people may not wish it to be made public that they are the victims of abuse. So even though it might be okay for you, there might be some people out there though where it's not okay to make it public. So if we say Joe Bloggs is an abuser and I'm related to Joe Bloggs, and Joe Bloggs has abused his kids, I'm one of his kids, or I'm related in some way, then people may assume that you're the one that's being abused. And you may not be, even though, well, you may be, but you may not be. So does that kind of make sense, that perhaps it opens up a can of worms that perhaps would be best not to be opened?
I understand where you're coming from there. And, well, if it is somebody that wasn't abused speaking about somebody who is an abuser, that's a different side of the coin. Then you've got a completely that's not the same as an abused person speaking about their abuser. I really don't think that people should be allowed to run around and name people as abusers because of hearsay or because they know that they did it to somebody else, because it's up to the people who actually it happened to, for them to if they want to bring to light what had happened to them, not up to somebody else, just because then it's almost as if you are being abused over again.
So you're saying that if, as an adult, so not as a child, but as an adult, you should be able to talk about who your abuser was. That's simply it, isn't it? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, as a person, as an adult, as a child, if somebody has done wrong by you and they've done some such things to you like that, you have the right to be able to speak up about it. You have the right, if that's how you're going to heal from it, you have the right to do that. They took away your rights to owning your own body and being able to choose what happens with your own body. Why shouldn't you be allowed to speak up about that? Why shouldn't you be able to let people know that this has happened to you, and this is why you feel some ways the way that you do, like with what.
So who is it? So can you explain to me then, Michael, who is it that you think should need to know?
Who should need to know? Well, if somebody is a child abuser, anybody who has children that could be anywhere near that person that could be in danger, they need to know. They need to know that this person is an abuser. They need to know to not leave their children with them or anywhere near them at any time. But if they don't know, if this person has had everything hushed up so that nobody can speak about them, they're on an open playing field. They can keep going and doing as they do because nobody knows what they do. At least if somebody knows what these people are doing, there's a chance to stop it happening again.
So does the sex offenders register fill that gap, do you think?
Well, I completely agree with the sex offenders register. I think that it should be out there to warn people of perpetrators or abusers in the area. I do realise that there is repercussions that happen from that, where you have people going off playing vigilante and trying to, satisfy their own needs for violence and things like that. But the good outweighs the bad, where people need to know where these people are. They need to know whether their children are near them, whether their children are associating with them, whether they're down at the football club watching the football. They need to know so that they can keep their children safe, because otherwise it happens over and over again and it never ends. Lately, it seems like it's happening more than often.
Yeah. So you're arguing that that all people who are convicted of pedophilia, those names should be made available to the community. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah. Of course they should. Their right to have it not named is craziness. That it gives them an opportunity to keep offending. So yeah, for sure, they should be named. They should be out there on a register, and people should be able to assess it. At the moment,
but Michael, only if they have a conviction, though.
Well, yes. Well, that's if well, it depends. Because a lot of people will go to court and that they will be guilty and they'll be found guilty, but they'll get a deal where they have no conviction put over their head, but they still did the crime. So still they should be on the register. If you have been taken to court and it's proven that you've done these things and you're not found not guilty, you are found guilty even without conviction, you should be on the register. You've done the crime.
Yeah, I guess if you're found guilty and for some particular reason there's no penalty, then you're guilty, and you should be on a sex offenders register.
Yeah, if the court says you proves that you committed that crime, you've been convicted. Whether you get sentenced to a term in prison or not is a different issue. If you've been convicted, for a sexual crime of any sort, you certainly should be on the register. The problem with the register, as I understand it, is that it is only available to people like law enforcement officers. Probably for a couple of reasons. One, as Wendy said in a comment to me, it's the idea of this legislation is to protect the perpetrator, not the survivor. She also pointed out we should be referring to survivors, not victims, and I agree with that. I forgot what I was going to say there. We've the other reason why I imagine that they don't want it made public is something that Michael raised, which is vigilantes.
Yes, and I think I also, Avery, have I have an issue around the register as well, and that is that if you're say 19 and you have a relationship with a 16-year-old, right? So there's 2 years difference, and this has happened. This has actually happened, so a person was charged with carnal knowledge because the male was, because the other person was underage, even though they were consenting individuals, and even though to this day they've been married and they've got kids and they're in their 40s, but he appears on the sex register. Yeah. Now I want to know whether you think that is fair.
I don't think that's fair, actually. That's a completely different charge, so to speak, or crime where there were two consenting people, that the ages were close together, that it was a young person. It's not the same as a pedophile going after a 10-year-old.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's wrong. But the fact is, they will still appear on the sex offenders register because they have a conviction of sexually offending.
Yeah, a couple of things there. She was 16, he was 19. That's a 3-year difference. He was an adult. She was legally a child. She cannot consent to sex legally. So he is. That's why he would have been convicted of. If he was convicted, why he would have been.
He
convicted.
was.
Okay, so that's why he was convicted of sexual assault of a child, because she was not of an age where she can legally consent. The fact that later they got married and they're still married should mean that he should be able to apply to the court to have his name removed from the register.
Agreed.
Yes, and I think he has tried that and it hasn't worked. I guess my point, and over the years,
How long have they been married?
20 years.
There's 20 years of evidence there that.
Yeah, I know, but the law's an ass sometimes.
Oh,
let's
yeah.
face it.
Yeah.
But I think so. Okay, so I think what I certainly agree with what Michael's saying, right? But I think that there are also conditions, and there are variances around all of that, and one of them is that it has to follow a conviction. You can't go around saying that your next door neighbour is a pedophile and then spreading that rumour or whatever when it might be completely unfounded. You just can't do that. So in your experiences, what are the boundaries around that then, do you think, Michael?
Yeah, well, there should be boundaries around that. Like, I think that the case that you're talking about with the 19-year-old and the 16-year-old, for somebody like that to get put on the sex offenders list belittles the list, because the list is for sexual offenders who are raping and hurting children. For something like that to be put on a list, I completely don't agree with. I think that actually belittles the list. It's like calling your next door neighbor a pedophile when he's not. It belittles the name of pedophile. Pedophile is the scum of the earth. They don't deserve any respect in my eyes. But if you keep running around calling everyone a pedophile, the word softens, and then people don't see that as that bad anymore. The same with the sex offenders list that has a bunch of 19-year-olds on it that had sex with a 16-year-old. They shouldn't be there. That's really. I realise that they've done the wrong thing and they've been charged for it. It would be a harrowing experience for all concerned there, especially the parents too. But that shouldn't even go near the list.
So maybe we need a caveat. So it's like Avery yesterday. We did that live feed with Paul, and we were talking about all those pedophiles that were arrested by the federal police. Remember that? Yep. And in that, we had, in that conversation, we were saying this is like the extreme. These are pedophiles who are spreading pedophilia amongst their kind. They're kind of a different species, and and they were manifestly involved in hundreds of sex offendings. Now, I would suggest one sexual assault is one too many, so I'm not condoning it. But there is this spectrum, isn't there, where there's and there's also, I can remember years ago worked with a guy who was a pedophile. He was arrested because he had all these images of girls. And he had thousands of them, and he categorized them because he saw them as being beautiful images. This is the way he argues it. It's just like pedophiles arguing that kids enjoy this form of love, and there's some bizarre shit they believe in. So it's a belief system, right? So anyway, he had these pictures. Now, ostensibly, and he wasn't selling them. I'm actually wasn't too sure where he was getting them from. He was obviously accessing others that were getting it, but they were taking him to court. Now, he certainly was a pedophile, no disputing that. But he wasn't sexually offending, he wasn't sexually abusing kids, but the photographs he was collecting were encouraging others to do that, even though the photographs he collected were not of kids in sexual, doing sexual behaviours. So, do you understand what I'm trying to say? That there's this spectrum of pedophilia where, some people conduct pedophile acts by connecting photographs, but without the actual physical and sexual abuse.
A person can be a paedophile in here only and not act on it. And I'm not going to say that's normal, but
no, I don't.
You can't and shouldn't be sent to prison for what you're thinking. But as soon as you act upon it, now you've subjected yourself to prison. The comment that Michael made about the 19-year-old and the 16-year-old not going on the register, my objection to that, to him not going on the register, is that to me it would then start that slippery slope where you start restricting. How do you choose? This person won't go on it, but that one will. Put them all on it and give the person like this one that you were talking about the opportunity to have their name removed when they proved that there was a genuine relationship between the 16-year-old and the 19-year-old, which they did when they got married and stayed that way for 20 years.
Yeah, but I think Avery, the issue around that is that once you're on it, you're on it.
But that's what I'm saying. They should be given the opportunity to be able to say, look, I shouldn't be on it, and this is why. And here's the proof that the relationship was genuine. We've been married for 5 years or 7 years or whatever it happens to be.
But once you've been on a list, even if you come off it later, the fact is you've been on that list. That doesn't change,
Yeah.
So you're still as likely to be tarred with that brush. I guess, Michael, I'd be really interested for you to talk about how you see recovery from what it is that you experienced as well.
How I see recovery? Well, I don't really think that you ever recover. You learn to look past it. You learn to get on with life, I guess. But it's always there. It never goes away. Even into parenthood, like my kids hardly ever have a sleepover at their friend's house. I just can't trust anymore. I can't trust to let my kids go out anywhere where I don't know the people. And even knowing the people, you still worry about it because, like, my father knew his brother. You know what I mean? And he was trusted, and still this happened. Those things just ring in your head all the time. I never did therapy or anything like that. I really don't see it as anything that would be a benefit to me. I more learned to look at it for what it was and try to accept that it happened. And my recovery is being out there trying to make sure that it doesn't happen to others so that they don't feel the same thing. But to say you get over it, like I've thought couple of times over that I have got over it and it's all a past thing in my life, and then something happens that triggers you and it's back, the anger's back, or the stupid actions are back, or whatever you do to get through the pain again is back, so over it, I don't think there is an over it. It's happened, it's in your heart, it's in your core, it's there for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I really like the way you explain that too, mate, because I have a thing, and I often tell clients this, I think forgiveness is overrated. Like there are some things that people do to you that you can't forget, and because you can't forget them, you can't forgive them either, and they're kind of with you forever. And I would imagine that sexual assault would be one of those, particularly as a child or at any time really, no excuse for that. At any time would be one of those things that you just could not overcome. And I guess what I hear you saying is that somehow it's still lurking there in the background. So you might think that things are going okay, and then something will happen and trigger something off, and it'll just hit you again. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Like I really thought I was over it. I'd face the person I'd I'd given them my thoughts. I'd taken them to court. I had them charged, and then they died, and it all hit me again. Like I ended up crashing their funeral and letting all the people know that were mourning for him exactly what he had done, just to make sure that the people that were there knew that they were mourning a pedophile. And it was done before I even realized I was doing it. You know what I mean? It's just you don't just something. Anything can trigger you. Anything can make you think back to what had happened, even if you hardly remember the act. You still remember it happened, and then you see things on the news. You see it's happening to people all the time. It's always a trigger. There's never a time. There's never a day when something doesn't go through my mind that I still remember what happened. That I still, it's never going to go away. And I really feel that most people that it happens to like this, it doesn't go away. It's always there.
And I guess one of the things that you're saying, because I know you, Michael, too, and I know that you do a lot of work for the Child Protection Party, and you're really dedicated to that. And I'm just wondering if that's one of the ways by which you can use your experience and doing this. Mate, I must say, I'll bring Avery in on this, but I also admire you greatly for having the courage and the guts to come here and publicly talk about your issues and how they've impacted you. But I also know that you've been doing some work with the Child Protection Party because you believe that is one way by which we can deal with this problem around child sexual abuse. Is that right?
You're 100% right there. That's that's what did bring me into this field. It was I felt like I was going to go crazy, and I thought, well, instead of facing all my energies to bad thoughts, to negative thoughts, I thought focus on a positive. Try to use this experience to motivate me to help others, to try to help people that it'll either happened to before or to stop it from happening to other people. I realize we're never going to stop it, but it was a self-healing. Same with Protect Our Kids. I came home from that funeral that day, and that's when I formed it, because it made me sick to the stomach that people can go through their whole lives. They can treat people like this, and nothing happens to them. They just get away with it, and the only people that hold the pain are the victims or the survivors. And I needed to do something to help others, and yeah, it was self-help at the same time. I'd like to say that it's worked, like even I feel like it has, but then you don't know. At any time you get another trigger, and you're back to square one, where the pain is all there again. The thoughts are always there. But like I like to feel that I am through this now. It's a long time ago that this happened to me. I see it as a crime, like the same as, well, not the same, but the same as somebody if they rob your house. You didn't ask to get robbed. You didn't ask them to come in and do this. They did it because they committed a crime against you. And that's the way you really need to see it. Being a survivor is you didn't ask for it. There was a criminal that inflicted it upon you.
Yeah.
And that also helps me to get through and to live on. We've all got to live on anyway. It's not as if the world's going to stop just because a couple of bad things happen to you.
Yeah, the really actually incredibly wise words, I reckon, is just in closing, Michael, I wonder if you could just tell people as a survivor, what are one or two things that you've found helpful that's helped you to become, you're a fabulous individual, so clearly you've learnt some lessons along the way. I'm just wondering if you could tell people what they might be.
Well, to face things for what they are, like as I said before, it's a crime that's committed against another person. You've got to see it for what it is. It is a crime, and as soon as you can face that and you realize that it's not your fault, you didn't cause anything, it does help. It helps you inside. And that's what one thing that has helped me get through a lot of it. You know what I mean? But and to help other people, that helps me get through it too. To try to stop it from happening, because it's a terrible thing that happens to people, and they and little children don't understand what's happening to them at the time. It's more when you grow into an adult that you become to have these issues. Like I've got a family member that took his own life, you know, because of, well, I don't know whether it was directly because of the torment of what happened to him, but it didn't help. It didn't help his mindset, and it hurt that much that he's no longer with us. You know what I mean? And I'd just like people to know that there are people out there that care. There are people out there that are going to listen to them, that are going to believe them. All they have to do is speak up and let people know what has happened to them. Now with this hush thing, that also makes it very hard. You know, how can a victim like speak up and let people know what's happened to them if they're not allowed to talk about their crime or their abuser?
Yeah, but I agree. But I think the important thing is that there are, fortunately, you know, there's the Child Protection Party, and there's people like Avery and myself and yourself who are available to hear what people have to say around this. And there's also the Riley Foundation, which is set up to represent parents of kids that have had their kids removed. So and there are a whole host of other agencies around that are prepared to. But I think what the advice you're giving is recognise that it's happened, talk to people, particularly about what happened to you, because there are people that will understand. There are lots and lots of people like you out there, mate.
That's right. Yeah, there are, and they need to know that there is help out there, that there is people like Child Protection Party who will listen, who will be there for the reason of, just because it's not okay. It's not okay for people to feel like this. It's not okay for people to have this done to them. And there's people, we're here. I'm always here for somebody to speak to. If anyone needs to support, advice, even just to speak to me about what has happened to make themselves feel better, I'm always here to help out. Like, I'll help anybody I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say that having you participate in this particular live feed has been fabulous. It's just been enlightening, and I've known you for a while, Michael, but I feel like now I know you so much more, and I really do appreciate the time and effort and courage that you've taken, mate. So thank you very much for all of that.
And I'd like to echo that, Tony.
Yep, sure.
And I'd also like to echo something that Wendy has just said in closing here. She says that Michael, she wants to know how brave she thinks you are, and that you are an inspiration. Much
you
love
are, mate. And that's
Thank you.
and we echo all of that too, mate. I think that you're an exceptional individual. I'm not saying that just to blow wind up your ass. I'm just telling you that you are. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, as Wendy does, and I know Avery shares that too, don't you, Ave?
Yep.
And I just, in closing, though, I just put it up on the screen. I just want people to, if you like these videos and you find that there's some stuff here that we talk about that's of interest to you, please subscribe, and to get notifications, just make sure that you ring the bell, if you would. So that would be really nice, and let you know that we are sharing these videos to. Is that right, Avery? We're going to share them to our website, then our Facebook page. Yep. So you'll be able to see them on our Facebook page, as well as just search through. So where do they appear on our website? On the
website, there'll be a channel. There's a channel called YouTube.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, you go to Community Broadcasting YouTube.
Yep. So keep in contact with us. We're doing 3 to 4 of these a week now,
That's all right.
And this is the second one that we've been fortunate enough to do with Michael, and you'll be seeing Michael again, I'm quite sure, because there'll be other topics that Michael will want to talk about in relation to kids and making sure that kids are safe. So I just want to say to everybody, and to Avery, thanks, buddy, for being with us. Really appreciate that as well. And Michael, special thanks to you for being with us. And we want you to keep tuned in to CPP TV. Good night. Take care. Be safe.